Women have ready to wear very low cut and revealing tops. What is the hardest you've ever seen anyone try to maintain eye contact? Male here. I have a relatable story. On the first date with this girl, she asked me, after a couple of hours of chatting and boozing, whether I prefer boobs or butts. Well, obviously both, but I prefer boobs over asses. So I told her that. Note that I didn't have the chance during the date to check her out, because we sat right in front of each other and very closely. If my eyes peeked down for 0.5 seconds she would have noticed it undoubtedly. However, immediately after I told her, I had to check out her boobs of course. After a couple of seconds I said to her, you know I have to look real quick now. Luckily she gave me permission and it was great. She is now my GF. I had a presentation in a class and figured the nicer I look the better grade I'll get because that's how the world works. So I dolled myself up. I already have big boobs but no cleavage because of their mass, so I wore a push-up bra to bring them together. That plus the stretch of the cute summer top I wore made my bust very shapely from every angle. Let me tell you, it wasn't even men boys who were looking, it was the other girls in my class. It was insane. They would get caught looking when I looked back at them like 8+ times during a conversation. And it was the same with all 4 or 5 girls I talked to for a decent amount of time. And I have trouble getting a guy who I actually like and want to look at them to look. I've only caught him once. I can only imagine his strength. Well, I used to have very tiny breasts so it was no issue. Now though they decided it was time to have a presence. It's hard to find things to wear that don't show off serious cleavage. And yeah, both men and women, straight and gay, keep drifting their eyes down. I wish I had a hilarious story but it's mostly just that everyone stares. Almost like they don't even realize they are doing it. If anything, it's hilarious that my mentor always looks at me directly in the eyes. Almost aggressively so. Male server here. It's hard taking an order when I'm standing over your tits hanging out. Actually quite recently, I was talking to a guy friend of mine and I'm very hyper-ig and I just bounce around when I talk and he was trying his hardest not to look. And I'll admit, even I would have looked, so I respect him a little more now. I'm pretty short so it kinda easy to look down my shirt, but I remember one time I had to lean forward in front of a guy and I could see the panic in his eyes. I don't wear low cut tops, but my observation, and other women have told me this, they've had this issue when wearing tops that were just really tight, not necessarily low cut. Some people are just wired to lock their eyes on a visual distraction. Men in particular apparently, and saw a documentary on con artists, and there was this interesting couple who had a team scheme that went like this. The female partner would create a distraction by wearing a revealing top, and she'd drop something in front of the male mark. She'd be leaning over fiddling with whatever she dropped, and for a few seconds, most marks would react according to plan, by getting deer caught in headlights syndrome. While they were distracted by the female partner, the male partner would either pick the mark's pocket or steal whatever else the mark had with them. They had quite a successful racket going before they were caught. Hey, I've got a counter question. How obvious is it when guys stare? I'm a guy and teenage hormones are rich and sometimes I can't help it. My wife and were walking on the beach many years ago and she caught me looking at some very beautiful ladies. She said, "You perv. Quit looking at those half-naked girls." I said, "I'm still a gentleman, hun. I'm only looking at the parts that are covered up." I can't say I've ever noticed if guys look at me at all, but I have a tendency to get embarrassed and yank my top up when I realize I'm showing more than I meant to. My husband has given up on trying to keep eye contact unless we're in public, and you can see the internal struggle with the shaking eye boggles. I've worn collar high tops and dudes still stare at my tits. I've worn loose blouses with a sports bra and dudes still stare at my tits. It ain't about the shirt cut. Dude kept looking up down while talking to me. Made me seasick, would have rather him just stare outright at that point. I usually like to wear blouses and leave the top buttons open so that you might say it leaves a cleavage. Anyhow, I was recently visiting my doctor and I've probably never seen a man trying so hard to focus on my face like he did that day. Eventually he gave up, and the last 3 minutes or so of my visit he spoke to me while he simply stared at my chest. I still feel awkward wearing my blouses unbuttoned like I did that day. Not a woman. but I feel this story fits fairly well here. I went to visit my then GF. She and I had been dating for 5 years at this point, so we were very well acquainted with each other. I walk in and she's just gotten out of the shower and is completely naked. I couldn't help but stare and she says, "Hey, my eyes are up here," and my smartass replies with, "I know what I'm looking at." The slap hurt but was totally worth it. The other day I was on the second floor on the bus wearing a boob tube and I was sat at the front, but I was turned to the side as I put my legs up on the seat next to me. A guy who was at the top of the stairs put on his sunglasses and kept trying to look to see through the front window. Funny, is it? I don't wear revealing tops, but I have huge boobs. I dress pretty modestly, so I guess it comes as kind of a shock when I'm getting frisky with a dude. It's actually hilarious to me because dudes who have seen my boobs have no idea what to do with them. They ask me to give them a boob job or "Can I duck your tits?" And I'm like, okay, mostly because I know it's not gonna feel like much. Boobs won't put a lot of pressure on a D, even if squished together. I've heard they're just so big. Every time, I can tell they're trying so hard to do math. My D plus her tits equals profit? Not me, but a friend of mine. In 8th grade, she tended to wear revealing clothes as a sort of rebellion towards her parents. I don't know her logic behind it, but to each their own. There was this one teacher who was notorious for looking at female students' assets. He would drop pens and ask girls to pick them up so he could ogle over them for a few moments, and was fired after he was caught watching porn on school property. Anyway, my friend was talking to him and he could not keep eye contact with her. I was sitting next to her and called him out. He got defensive, denied it, yet kept doing it throughout the whole conversation. My friend also peaked physically in 8th grade, so she was the most mature looking of all the girls and a prime target for the dropped pen gag. I cringe when I think about this. Every ducking time. Edit. Typo. Also, what's it like to have such power over people? On the first real date with the man I'm still currently dating, I'm a kneecap, so it doesn't matter what I wear. There's cleavage. He only stared me straight in the face the entire time he was talking to me and making us dinner, in a way that was so obvious he was trying to be a gentleman. We had a previous fling years ago. He's no gentleman, in the best way. The fact that he was trying so hard to keep eye contact was very endearing. I let him off the hook and told him it's fine to look after enjoying the struggle for a while. I'm totally out of my tree here, but I'm an old fart, 81, and it's warm enough now that I've started wearing my shorts and showing off my white legs. I told the ladies at one store, "Don't you be looking at my legs now. My eyes are up here." Good for a giggle. Hey. I'm really unobservant, so I don't really notice where guys' eyes go to, especially since I find eye contact awkward. But one time I was walking with some friends and in the background I heard this teenager shout to his mates, "Her tits are bigger than your mum's," and I just laugh whenever I think about it. There's gonna be a lot of new tabs opened from this thread, lol. I was at a pub with a mate once. We were desperate for some food and wandered in. It was a bit rough. I was the only female there. Some blokes were playing snooker and kept wandering their gaze over to me, chatting loudly with lots of bravado. Occasionally they'd drop their voices to say something while they were looking at me. I just ignored them, until one of them launches the white ball over the edge to land near our table. I turn to my friend and say, "Watch this," and stand up to my full 6 height and bend over to pick up the ball, and hand it back to this guy. Him, and all his mates, instantly stopped talking. I had 5 deers in headlights. I said nothing, boring my eyes into his as I placed the ball in his hand. I gave him a quick eating grin and turned away. Minimal effort. Would do again. I worked at an office job with mostly women and one very religious and modest male. 4 of us, including him, were all standing having a conversation, and I kind of forgot he was there because he never said much. The ladies were talking about something boob oriented and I chimed in complete with a snap of my bra strap. At the snap he dropped everything he was holding in his hands, which seemed to wake him from his booby trance. It was innocence at its most priceless moment. I came here to read about these stories, but now I'm just daydreaming about boobies. Not disappointed. When I was dead as a size A and pretty young, I had a conversation with a guy, over 18, who literally stared at my chest our entire conversation. I started covering my chest even though what I was wearing wasn't revealing. Some college guys are trash. Well, I'm female and not even gay, but I tend to look at everyone's chests regardless of their gender because I'm so short and that's eye level for me. Gets really awkward around women. I can't look at their stomachs either because then it looks like I'm looking at something else, and making eye contact is not only really hard for me but just bloody painful for my neck. Also, sometimes women just have very satisfyingly smooth and round breasts, and I'm not gay, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't take a quick look from a distance. But it's the same with muscular men. I just can't help it, and I'm not even straight either. I'm quite a busty girl, so it is funny watching these guys. The hardest someone was trying to maintain eye contact would have to be when I dropped the money for my lunch. Bent down to pick it up and the shirt slipped down a little bit. The guy behind the counter started stuttering and kept looking up and down. It was quite funny actually. He tried so hard, you could see his eyes start to drift. It was eye contact. Then his eyes would just float down a little before snapping back up. He had to take his glasses off and put his sunglasses on. G-cups in a tank top. See, on the flip side, I'm a 6FT2 dude and most people in my area are 5FT8 or below. It's difficult, because if I'm looking down to see their face, the angle makes it really easy to glance at their junk. I just look them directly in the eyes or stare straight down. XD. Doesn't even have to be low cut, usually happens in job interviews. I'm used to it. I don't intentionally wear very revealing tops, but part of being 36HH means pretty much anything is revealing. About 5 years ago I was into buying men's size medium shirts, cutting the neck and tying up the bottom with a hair tie for a cute summer look. I also like to buy the nerdy vintage shirts because they never have cute nerdy shirts in the women's section. So one day I'm wearing a red Batman shirt, so it says Batman across the boob part, but on me mostly says Atma Osa, and can't get my card to work at the gas pump. I have to go inside and apologize for struggling. The young guy behind the counter is chill about it and swipes my card for me. While the transaction is processing he goes, "I like your Boobman shirt, Batman." I laughed and said thanks, but we had to awkwardly stand there while my card finished processing and I could leave. Men who squeeze themselves into two small grey sweats and jogger. What the hardest you've ever seen someone try to keep from laughing? I went on a date last month and the guy held entire conversations with my cleavage. I have larger breasts, but it was not a very low cut top. I didn't get pissed or go psycho like several people have insinuated in the comments, but he definitely did not get a third date after dealing with it for 2 separate encounters. Not a lady with a low cut top, but I find it easier to just look somewhere else than try to maintain contact. Opposite perspective here. My co-workers are pretty sex-positive women who have no issue discussing just about anything. 2 of them were talking about how their boobs were too big. The shirts weren't necessarily revealing, but they were t-shirts and neither was wearing a bra. There was a lot of grabbing and jiggling going on, and one of them kept looking over at me. I stared holes in that chick's optic nerve, and imagined myself as a matador dodging the bull known as HR. Probably could have gotten away with tasteful peeks, as that was literally the subject of discussion, but I ain't risking it. I'm oblivious as hell and never notice people looking at my chest. My friends tell me about it after the fact, which amuses me. I've had male friends tell me my tits are phenomenal, that I'd have cleavage in a turtleneck, that laying your head on them is like a waterbed pillow. My favorite struggles to watch are buzz-drunk men making a valiant effort. The most impressive was the man who I watched notice them and then dedicate the next 20 minutes to maintaining eye contact. Like, aggressive eye contact. I finally let him off the hook and said I saw his effort and appreciated it, but he could lol if he wanted. He smirked and took a good minute-long look and then attempted to pick up the conversation again. He had trouble recalling the topic. I was flirting with dating him at the time and he was quite far gone that night. It's a fond memory for me. Always makes me chuckle. As a woman with large tits, every V-neck I wear is obscene. Honestly, this happened to me at work as a teenager. I worked in a store that required me to wear a denim button-up. Well, button-ups just don't stay buttoned on me. Believe me, I try. One day my button-up came unbuttoned unbeknownst to me. There was a dad in my store. I noticed he was staring at me. I thought he needed help, so I asked him if he was doing okay, or needed assistance finding something. He's looking everywhere but at me. It's awkward. I turn to leave and catch a glimpse of my unbuttoned shirt. Only 2 buttons had come undone, but I was giving a show. I was mortified. I want a breast reduction. It wasn't even low cut, it was just revealing like it was skin tight, but everything was covered. I'm 20 but I look 16. For Easter I had to dress up to host and my married 50-year boss could not stop looking at me. Anytime I turned in his direction his eyes were on my head. Like snapped. He's a super weird and rude man, so I was kinda shocked he even cared. I don't usually notice TBH. I don't really pay that much attention to men. If anything, I have to try and maintain eye contact with other women doing the same thing. As a larger chested woman, I very much enjoy my assets. They are my favorite physical feature about me, and personally if I didn't want you to look I'd cover them up. Almost to the point where if I am wearing something particularly boob flattering and I don't get at least a glance I feel sort of disappointed. Don't stare, that can be creepy, but by all means take a glance and move on. Boob guys and gals are the best though, where you watch the internal struggle the whole time. I often find excuses to lean or bend down in their eyeline. I'm just reaching right over this desk to pick up this printout. Yes, I am a horrible person, but meetings are boring and sometimes just need a little fun. Simon and Garfunkel. Oh Cecilia, I'm begging you hard. Dude here. The hardest time I've had maintaining contact. Ex's friend got one of those dermal piercings right in the cleavage of her already distractingly large chest. I've trained myself from an early age not to stare or even glance when women wear revealing tops. But she added something shiny there and it almost threw my years of training out the window. I've got a story of the only time I've noticed that. When I was about 14 I was on an outdoor education trip. See kayaking O circumflex Y with diaresis copyright A-ring. Anyway, I wasn't wearing a bra at the time and my shirt was body conforming and I have quite perky boobies and my nips kinda come out to play when the sun goes away, yeah. Lol, when it's cold. And after a day of sea kayaking we had a fire and we were all gathered around, but it was quite cold out. I was very naive at the time and didn't really think anyone looked at boobs, especially mine. But needless to say I was immediately made self-conscious of it when a group of girls came up to me and yelled at me to put a bra on. I didn't have one and my swimmers were wet, hence why I wasn't wearing them on this cold night. Years later my close male friend said I was quite the talk of the young lads that trip, and that the girls were trying to get the attention of said lads but they were occupied and the girls got jealous. Whole thing is hilarious to me because I never thought people thought of me that way. O circumflex Y with diaresis copyright A-ring. Sorry for my itty formatting. Wearing a low-cut dress out to eat once and the waiter intentionally kept his eyes on my so the entire time. He was kinda bashful and nerdy, had a badass Batman shirt peeking through his button up, and I think he was scared of offending either of us. Really nice guy though. Pity tipped him damn near 50% for his efforts. I wore a black mesh shirt with black pasties to cover my nips. After the bar we went to In and Out right before they closed. They have some bright lights so you can clearly see through my mesh shirt, and the teenage guy tried talking to my BF but my BF was drunk and I was the one ordering. He was looking at my eyes for the whole interaction, kinda I could tell he was low-key nervous too, lol, but it's not big deal. Here is a reverse of that, too funny not to share it. Me, 40ish M. And a colleague, 20ish M. We touring a supplier's facility with their production manager, 30ish F. She was very attractive and personable and had a naturally occurring patch of white hair over her forehead where her hair parted. She also had a very nice pair of breasts that filled out her shirt and showed some cleavage. We both gave each other the look as in, oh, she is quite some thing, isn't she? But trying to be professional we avoid the boobs while we talked to her, but we kept looking up at her shock of white hair. Finally, after a few minutes of conversation, she smiles and says in exasperation, for Christ's sake, I wish people would just look at my tits instead of my hair. We then look at each other and say almost at the same time, I think we have just been given permission, so for the next 2 minutes we talked to her while staring at her tits and until we all just fell apart laughing at the whole situation. Please forgive me, my balls never give up trying to make me do their bidding. Went out for drinks with my boyfriend and a friend. This guy sat down across from me and pointed to my cross, telling me he liked it. I was wearing a low-cut top at the time and it was pretty obvious where I was looking. I didn't really mind, but when he tried egging me on by telling me he didn't like a certain type of dialect, I don't like insert my dialect here, it couldn't hear the rest. That's sad, I said with my full-blown disliked dialect and hiding my laughter behind a glass of beer. Do you have this dialect? He asked, confused and dumbfounded. Yes. He stood up and walked off. Never saw him the rest of the night or since. He must really dislike my dialect. Why do you think us guys wear sunglasses all the time? After getting implants in my titties, every time I met my friends who knew about it, they would glare at my face with vigor. At one point I just said, you can look, you know? And I remember my friend saying, thank God. I'm sorry in advance. My ex was staring at my boobs for the majority of the time he was breaking up WMLMAOR. I've had co-workers straight stare down my shirt. Once I literally snapped my fingers and said, yo, up here. Another time, somebody stood behind me while I was talking to them and I had no idea they were staring down my shirt. That was fun when I got told afterwards. It does not take a low cut top. Literally could be wearing anything and this can be an issue. I'm always showing cleavage. Always. I don't care. You can look if you want. You can comment if you want. I've used the lean and the bounce to my advantage. The only thing I notice is when my boss is around. Then I try to keep it covered so she doesn't have a stroke. Not a girl. But I had a friend think I was super into her. I was not. Because I sat right across from her and accidentally looked at her boobs a lot. Like a lot. It was only because they were distractingly huge. It was so hard trying to have a conversation with her because I had to really focus on not having my eyes directed to that area. For your information, ladies, I'm sure most of you understand this, but just in case, we're genuinely trying to not look. If we do, it's not out of being pervy, they just stand out. I am a guy, but I just want to say I hate my stupid eyes so much sometimes and I'm sorry. One of my teachers once ignored me for the whole class because I was wearing a v-neck t-shirt. I was in 6th grade and hit puberty early. I have a serious question. Do women want men to look? Or would it hurt more that no one looks? As with many men, I try to never stare, but as a few posts up mentioned, if I got caught glancing and the woman adjusted her shirt right after, I'd feel like a pervert. I try my best to just keep solid eye contact, or I'll make eye contact and glance to the side. I've never had problems with people looking at my chest, but here's a somewhat related story. This happened a week ago while I was waiting in line for the maid cafe at Fanheim. My friend, who was cosplaying Heather Chandler, wearing a silky red robe so most of her chest was exposed, volunteered to do my makeup. We were both on our knees on the floor and she was taller, so if I looked straight forward it was straight into her cleavage. I didn't know her too well and I had to look straight forward for her to do my makeup, so it was an awkward first 15 minutes while I tried to not stare at her chest. Eventually I realized she didn't care, so it went smoothly after that. She was great at makeup. So what I've gathered from this thread is everybody looks and likes tits. Alright, let's pack it up boys, we figure this mystery out. Not really the same, but I went to the doctors the other day. First time at said doctors, and I mentioned that I needed to get my breasts checked out at the ultrasound joint and he just kept looking up and down. Eye contact between my boobs and my eyes. I was wearing a hoodie but thought it was funny. Won't be going back though. Ladies, can you tell the difference between if a guy genuinely wants to read what your t-shirt says or if he is trying to stare at your figure? I have many times wanted to just read what a t-shirt says that a woman is wearing, but I get self-conscious thinking she's going to think I'm just staring at her body. Made the mistake of wearing a low-cut top to college, UK college, like the senior year of high school I guess. My guy friends were trying not to look at me. It was awkward.